Hello all and welcome to my channel. In this video, we'll be talking about the India-Pakistan wars and we'll be talking of the war for 1965. There was a previous war that was there for between India and Pakistan. That was in the year 1947 and there is a separate video that I have posted for that particular war. For viewers who are coming to my channel for the first time, I invite you to go ahead and check out the videos that I've posted. If you like the videos, do go ahead and like those. Consider subscribing my channel as well. In case there is anything that you like to know or comment on, feel free to connect with me via the comment section. Having said that, let's go ahead and start to discuss about the India and Pakistan war for 1965. Now, before we start to talk about the war itself, there is a background where there was a slow and gradual build up to the war. And it is very important for us to understand that background and that build up. Okay, so the first thing that we need to understand is the background that we had for the partition and the war of 1947. This is one of the key elements we need to consider. As part of the war, there was a part of Kashmir that went to Pakistan that we know as Pakistan occupied Kashmir. As I mentioned in the previously actually in this video, to understand more about the 1947 war, you are more than welcome to go ahead and check it out via the YouTube video that I posted on this subject. And also, there's a whole lot of other material available to understand this background. Why I'm saying this background is essential is because that is the root of the Kashmir problem. The second thing, again, this is a very key element that we need to consider before we talk of the India-Pakistan war for 1965. So all of you know that there was a war that happened between India and China, and that was in the year 1962. And all of us know that India got defeated in that particular war. So that was one of the key elements that Pakistan had in its mind. One of the other key elements, so India lost to China in 1962. In 1964, Nehru died. So Nehru was the first Prime Minister for India after independence, and he passed away in the year 1964. This was again one of the crucial, timing-wise, this was crucial because what happened at that point of time was that obviously the reins were passed on to the next Prime Minister, Shastriji. So after Nehru's death, Lal Bahadur Shastriji became the Prime Minister of India, and to the outside world, he obviously was a very polite man. We have heard a lot about him. We have read a lot about him. No offense to anyone. He's been one of my favorite prime ministers for India over the years. But again, he was a darling of the crowd. I've heard it from the senior generations that people used to just follow him. But then he was a very unassuming character, and to the outside world, especially Pakistan, they they thought that he will be a sitting duck in terms of the reins of the country. The other crucial element we need to understand is US aid to Pakistan. Now, ever since Pakistan became independent, and obviously when India and Pakistan gained the independence, US has been providing a lot of aid to Pakistan. This has been in the form of dollar investments, FDIs, aid like a grant, and also arms and ammunition. This is again a very key element for us to understand because again, Pakistan had superior quality of weapon that was available to them at that point in time. So with all these combination of factors, starting from 1962, the defeat to China, to Nehru's death in 1964, to Shastriji assuming power in 1964, and then Pakistan trying to assert itself in the region in 1965. So this is the precursor of the background that we need to understand before we start to look at the war itself. So in summary, if we put everything together, So what Pakistan had at that point of time was it had a very strong reason to believe that in an armed conflict with India, it will definitely have an upper hand. So that is what led to the war itself. Now, to understand this a bit better, how it all started. So it all started with Pakistan's aggression. Now let's understand a bit further. The first aggression that was done, that Pakistan got involved was termed as Operation Gibraltar. Again, going to the background, as we had discussed, Pakistan's army was definitely in the false sense of hope that the local Kashmiri population that we had in Kashmir, they were literally dying to join Pakistan. Kashmir has a predominantly Muslim dominated population, and Pakistan was of the opinion that they would be willing to join Pakistan. And with this intention, they launched the operation, which we all know as Operation Gibraltar, and they crossed the actual line of control in the first week of 1965. To give you a background, there were more than 30,000 soldiers that invaded and crossed the actual line of control. One very key thing to note over here is that when they invaded or when they crossed the actual line of control, they did not cross as the actual army. They were disguised as militants. Because at that point of time, there was a thought in the Pakistani leadership and the Pakistani military think tank that they were not willing to go into a full-scale war with India, because they were under the impression that this operation will be very successful and they will be able to go ahead and get the local population turned in their tide. As luck would have it, and as we say, the ground realities are very different than perception. This operation was a big disaster. Why was this a disaster? Because the locals informed the Indian army of the intruders, and they were duly dealt with by the Indian army. Since there were people from the Pakistan military, there were quite a number of deaths that actually happened because the Indian army was able to go ahead and corner them, and they were able to eliminate those intruders. The other thing which is also responsible for the lack of success from Pakistan side in this operation was a severe lack of coordination among the intruding Pakistani army. So it was pretty easy for the Indians to go ahead and crush the operation. This was again very much against what the Pakistani military leadership was hoping for. Now, with the miserable failure of Operation Gibraltar, there was a counter attack that Pakistan actually went ahead and started. And that operation was termed as Operation Grand Slam. This was started on the 1st of September 1965. The objective was to capture the vital town of Akhnur in Jammu, which the Pakistani think tank, wrongly so, thought that this would cut the communications and cut off this route supplies or the supply routes to the Indian troops. This was a gross miscalculation on the part of Pakistan, because obviously this was not true. However, having said that, Akhnur was still pretty high on the radar for India, and it was definitely strategic for India anyways. The Akhnur sector was defended lightly. When we say lightly, obviously because there were Indian infantry battalions and there was a squadron of tanks. But the tanks that we had at that point of time were no match with the Pakistani Patton tanks. Now, the Patton tanks at that point of time were one of the most recent tanks that were built. Those were deployed by the US and supplied by the US to Pakistan. One of the other things that happened as part of Operation Grand Slam, and I've been trying to search for the reasons on this, and I've not been able to get to a good reason. The first day of the attack, obviously, the Pakistani Patton tanks were able to go ahead and have an upper hand to a large extent. The second day, there was a major shift, and the commanding officer was actually changed. Now, with this change, with Yahya Khan coming in place of Major General Akhtar Hussain Malik, the attack was delayed by 1 day. And for the benefit of everyone watching the video, 1 day for a normal person may not sound that great or not that long of a time. But when we are in a full-fledged war, 1 day means a lot. 24 hours gives a lot of time to the opposition to go ahead and plan a counterattack. And that is exactly what happened. India was able to come up with a lot of resources on their side, not to counterattack, but at least for defending its position. The other thing which majorly happened on the Pakistani ranks was with the change of leadership. There was a lot of confusion that was caused in the Pakistani officer cadre. When the attacks commenced on the 3rd of September, obviously the Indian forces were sufficiently reinforced to hold out for a couple of more days. As I mentioned, they did not have enough power to launch a counterattack, but holding off was a good enough position at that point of time. What was India's response? So this is where the strategic leadership and the foresightedness of the Indian army, we have all known the Indian military, the Indian army, the Indian defense forces, they have time and again proven after 1962 that they are definitely a force to reckon with, not only in the region, but across the world as well. We have had so our army and our defense forces have been involved in quite a number of wars. So now they've had a lot of experience. But obviously, if you go back and look at 1965, they were coming straight out of the defeat in 1962, and that defeat was pretty demoralizing for their defense forces. With the change of leadership, with Shastriji at the helm, there was a discussion that happened between the defense leadership for India and Shastriji. And it was decided that in Kashmir, India was barely able to go ahead and defend its position. We were not in a position to counterattack because obviously the strength of the Pakistani forces was a lot more. So what was decided was India actually decided to go ahead and cross the international border for the first time in history of independent India. The reason for that was that India wanted to go ahead and diverge the concentration of the army and the military forces that Pakistan had in the Kashmir region, and divert them so that they would have had to fall back and defend their own territory. With this, in September of 1965, 6 September to be precise, India actually crossed the international border for the first time, and they opened up a new front in Pakistan, Punjab. This step proved to be very, very decisive in the context of the overall war. Because what happened is India made very deep penetration into the Pakistani side and captured quite a lot of the territory and areas leading up to Lahore. For viewers interested to know a little bit more of the background, I will invite you to go ahead and search in Google or YouTube for Ichugal. That is a canal that we had actually gone ahead and captured right on the eastern side of Lahore. So that was a very big win for us, for the defense sources and the defense for India, because of which Pakistan had to actually fall back. I've not gone ahead and given a lot of details for each and every different section and the sectors that we were fighting in, because obviously that would have made the video very long. But to tell you some of the key areas that we were fighting the war in, Khemkaran is one of the key sectors that we were fighting the war in. Lahore was another one. And obviously Jammu, Akhnur, that was another one. Amritsar was one of the other key strategic places that Pakistan wanted to occupy as part of the invasion. Without going into a lot of the details, there were some major confrontations that I definitely wanted to highlight over here. And the one and only Veer Abdul Hamid, all of us have read a lot about him when we were young. We've all heard stories about him. We have read about him when we were young, as we were growing up. And there was a battle of Asal Uttar that took place. That actually took place on September 9th and 10th of 1965. And we have talked about the Pakistani patent tanks, which were supplied by the US or made by US, and the fact that the patent tanks were no match for any tanks in the world at that point of time. This myth was busted by a great Veer Abdul Hamid. To tell you what actually happened, so he actually destroyed 7 patent tanks on his own just by using a recoilless rifle in an open jeep. Now again, for viewers who want to understand a bit more about what a recoilless rifle is, I invite you to go ahead and check it out. People would have gone ahead and checked maybe some videos or some pictures of it, where it's actually a rifle which is mounted on top of a jeep and you fire on that. Since it's an open jeep, it's obviously you are pretty much at risk with a lot of opposition which are able to go ahead and target you. But having said that, with all the odds against him, Veer Abdul Hamid was able to go ahead and destroy 7 patent tanks, and that actually stopped Pakistan in its track, because their morale was actually defeated at that point of time, because they were always under the opinion that our tanks are the superior tanks. They cannot be beaten in a war. And here was a soldier from India ruining one tank after the other, not by using another tank, but just by using a recoilless rifle in an open jeep. As luck would have it, Veer Abdul Hamid actually succumbed to in the battlefield, but that was not before. He had already destroyed not only the tanks, but also the pride and the morale of the Pakistani army. He was conferred with the highest military decoration for India, the Paramveer Chakra, posthumously. Now, talking of the war itself and talking of ceasefire. So, as we have seen in the previous section of the video, what was happening is that India was going ahead and occupying the territory for Pakistan, and Pakistan was occupying territory for India. So that was a cat and mouse game that was going on at that point of time. And the thought process was that whoever was able to go ahead and capture more land will obviously be in a better position to go ahead and demand or make a demands work when things got to the negotiation table. Again, I'm not going to that much of detail, again, for lack of time. But if you go back and viewers who are interested in this, if you go back and look at the data and the material which is available out there, even from independent sources, I'm not saying only from the Indian military or the Indian side of the story, but also from international viewers or the international media, there was a lot. India actually had a huge upper hand. We'll talk about it in the subsequent phases of the video. But talking of the ceasefire itself, on 28th of September, the United Nations Security Council, they passed a resolution, and the resolution was to demand an unconditional ceasefire from both the nations. And obviously, India accepted immediately. Pakistan accepted it with a little bit of antics and dramatics, as usual. And on 23rd of September, they accepted it as well. The US and Soviet Union, Russia was not disintegrated in 1965. It was called as Soviet Union at that point of time. They used diplomatic tools to prevent any further escalation in the region. And the peace negotiation in Tashkent, the famous Tashkent, was held, where the Indian Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri and the Pakistani President Ayub Khan, they signed the famous Tashkent Agreement. That agreement was to agree to withdraw to pre-August lines by February of 1966. As I mentioned previously in the video, there was a lot of area that we were occupying and a lot of area that Pakistan was occupying. Here we look at some of the stats from the war. In terms of forces deployed, India had a much larger force, almost closer to 1 lakh or 100,000. Pakistan had about 60,000. India had won almost 1,920 square kilometers of of Pakistani land, almost 4 times of what Pakistan had occupied, which was 540 square kilometers. So India had a huge upper hand, as I mentioned earlier. In terms of tank, India lost 97 tanks, whereas Pakistan lost 450 tanks, including tanks which have been captured as part of the war, and they are available in different museums in India. As far as the Air Force is concerned, this is where Pakistan was slightly better off. India lost about 59 aircrafts, whereas Pakistan lost 43 aircrafts. So the question that leads is, who ultimately won? On the Pakistani side, we all know how the Pakistani media works, and they actually relied on fabricated original reports, which was controlled by the Pakistani press, and we all know that now. There's a there's a wave in Pakistan, which because they were getting all false information that their military was doing a great job and they were defeating India, all those sort of lies. And what the normal population, the common people felt was that as part of the peace negotiation, they had surrendered military gains. This had actually led to a lot of protests, including student riots in Pakistan as well. The Tashkent Declaration was seen by the people of Pakistan as having forfeited the gains that they had made on the ground in the battlefield. As luck would have it, this lies was the lid was taken off, so to speak, not only by the international media or by India, etc., but by the Pakistani authors itself. There is one famous author I wanted to point out over here, Muhammad Ahmad Durrani. He published a book called The Myth of 1965 Victory. This reportedly exposed the Pakistani fabrications about the war. And as we know, all the books were bought by the Pakistani army to prevent circulation because obviously that would have broken the myth. But of late, over the last few years, there have been a lot of debates which have gone on, and retired people from the Pakistani military and army, they've openly said that all the wars that they have waged on India, all of them were started off by Pakistan. India had nothing to do in terms of starting any of the wars that has ever happened between India and Pakistan. And for the people of Pakistan watching the video who are feeling that I'm going in the wrong direction or I'm not sharing the correct information, I invite you to go ahead and look at independent media, independent reports, independent journals which have come out, which actually say exactly the same. There's been a lot of lies which has been circulated in Pakistan, and unfortunately, the common people in Pakistan have been swept away by that. India had the upper hand when the ceasefire was announced, and we have taken a look at that also in terms of the area that we had captured. I was mentioning about the independent sources, and there are 3 independent sources that I've listed out here in the video. Again, I invite you to go ahead and check it out. As I mentioned, all these are independent. This has nothing to do with anything coming out of India or anything coming out of Pakistan. This is something which is the truth, and this is for everybody to go ahead and view and understand. One of the other major factors was, had ceasefire not been called on the 20th of September, India definitely had a lot more arms and ammunition and bench strength, as we know, to carry on the war. Had it gone for a few more days, like about 7 or 10 days, India would have been in a position to go ahead and have an outright win. So India definitely had a much greater upper hand at the time when the war was, the ceasefire was called. Having said that, I'll take this opportunity to say Jai Hind to all the martyrs who participated in the war. Thanks to the military, the army, the navy, all the defense forces of India. It's because of everything that you do, you lay down your lives to ensure that we stay peacefully in our homes with our families. We take pride in everything that you do. We are all behind you, and thanks for everything that you do for us. Jai Hind.